Ef þú byrjar svo, Raggi, að spyrja hann.
Hvað segirðu?
Ef þú byrjar að spyrja hann, bara eins og gerðu aðan.
Yeah, okay, Anthony, tell us about your journey to Asia.
Yes, it was a very interesting journey. I hadn't been in Asia for a few years since I spent a period living in Sri Lanka, and I used to travel more often into countries there. But this time it was with the World March, it was sort of short periods, about 4 days per country, considering also the traveling time from one to another, but they are in the region. It's a region that congregates nearly 450, 500 million people. So it's very important from that viewpoint. And Pakistan, we haven't been there with a march before, because Pakistan is always has a situation of hostility with India, and it's a nuclear power. So it traditionally has been a hot point in the relationships with India. Also, although in Pakistan there is a proportion of Hindus and Buddhists, and the majority is Muslims in terms of religion. And you know, the partition of India, when the Brits left or were expelled by Gandhi and the movement of the nationalism in 1948, they arbitrarily they partitioned the country, and in the part that is Pakistan, they allow the Muslims to concentrate. But also that was a very sort of bloody event, because people had to move from one section of India where they have lived for a long time into another one, and vice versa. People that were Hindus, they had to move out of what is present Pakistan. And this estimated that cost more than 1 million people killed and wounded and things like that. It was very cruel. And well, the country has like a negative perception, Pakistan, because the Western media is always manipulating in one way or another, and then there are the groups of influence that are interested in present Pakistan as a conflictive country. Of course, they have had military dictatorships. Many times the governments do not last for long. And there are coups d'etat. Some of the heads of states who have been killed. So really, there is a reason also for this sort of negative press. But things are changing very fast. I think eventually they will be part of the BRICS. Countries that don't want to be part of a polarized world, but in a multipolar structure where will be respected as separate countries, each one of them. So there are lots of interesting developments. But let me go back, because really that was not the first country that we visited. We visited first Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a very exciting country as well, with is what was is Bengal a long time back. They just had a revolution now, where the government that had been in power for 17 years, abusing elections and that type of things, was expelled. And there is a caretaker government that is Professor Yunus. Yunus is a Peace Nobel Prize. He's 82 years old, and he is the head of the caretaking government that is supported by the army. And the previous head of state is a woman who left to India and is staying there in the position of a political refugee, if you want. And then that created a sort of very aggressive revolution where more than 1,000 people got shot by the police because she tried to suppress the people's movement reaction. And lots of youngsters also died as a result. And so, but that situation in the last few months has calmed down. And I would tell you that the perception of the country was very normal. And our friends very actively had organized a careful program of activities. The people that you could call the base of the movement are people who have been in average 20 or more years participating of the different councils that had activities there, like Mariana's council, Maxi, and some other Spanish councils, etc. So what I want to say is that there are people who can set things in action, that they are well organized, that have organizational experience, and they are mature in terms of the understanding of humanism. Also is Declared Mendes, who is from Australia. He has visited and he has developed a friendship with them for the last 20 years, both in Nepal, in Bangladesh, and with the people in Pakistan. And that facilitates, because when you have friends in each one of the countries, friends that have grown with you, because 20 years back, some that today have in the rank of ministers in government, or they are in top positions in academy, 20 years back, they were juniors in the professions, etc. So it's interesting because now we have more influence within those countries with people that really have been at the same time exposed to humanism for many years. And that is a great asset, because you can, on that base, you can operate. And when we suggested to really aim at universities, aim at the media, and at the same time to municipalities as organizations in the ground, as at the base of the society. And then it was a good strategy, because then they could have access and they developed good contacts and they organized events, not just in Dhaka, but also in other parts of the country. So we had a very intense visits here and there, but all of them full of interesting events. And we cover universities. In universities, one of them called a meeting with chancellors of 6 or 7 of the main other universities in the country, a sort of conference on peace and nonviolence, and to receive the World March. So there we have in the panel, there were 12 or 15 people with connections to all the academic world, and very influential and very learned people. And their meetings were, those discussions were extremely interesting. And we left plans as a result to continue the work at the grassroots level, at the base level, in terms of qualification, of studying more in depth the problems of violence. In the speeches of the march, Rafael was mentioning more and more that violence should be considered a mental condition, a mental disease, because you cannot keep condoning violence and ignoring violence, and in the meantime having a scourge in the base of society that is perpetuating itself. On the other hand, we have to study a lot what fuels violence and how violence is really nurtured by the same system, because the system is violent and benefits in that situation, because it divides the social base and creates levels of alteration that they can politically manipulate and antagonize, etc., etc. We all know that this State Department and the Pentagon finance all these games that where you kill people, children kill people on television, and the bandits are running and they blow them up in one way or another. So you can see that from early time in life, there is a cult of violence. And that seems to be brave, and both males and women, if they can have weapons and kill other people, seems to be heroes. And the same thing is what the cinema industry does. And there is lots of violence, family violence and economic violence and company violence. All types of violence is a cult of it. And they are made as very interesting. That is the type of thing that people want to watch. So just to mention how in the moment that you start to study the perpetuation of social violence, you will find lots of mechanisms and lots of intentions, awful intentions from the powers and from the financial to keep that running. because it's beneficial for them. So these matters have to be studied in depth. And thanks to artificial intelligence, it's possible to understand the sources and how those mechanisms that fuel violence in society are articulated and create awareness in people. And then on the other hand, Rafael brought some sort of thermometers in paper that they have a name in Spanish like violentómetro, a measure of violence exercised against other people, obviously. And from mild, when you are unpleasant to somebody, when you use derogatory language, when you coerce, and then it goes up until the point that there is physical aggression, or the point where the violence is so extreme that you kill the other person. It's like a thermometer with description of 30 or 40 cases in intensity that show and help people to understand how all these forms of violence are connected. And the same thing in gender violence, how in milder forms, when in the couple or with a girlfriend, whatever, you start to control whom did she call or where did she go after work, and you start to sort of spying on her, and how goes in crescendo the jealousies or the abuses or etc., to the point that again there is physical aggression or the death. And those have been developed by one of the institutes of research of Mexico that has over 300,000 students. So it's a very powerful one. And the government has adopted those indicators, those thermometers, to use at a national scale in the country, which is another concrete step to create awareness in people about violence. Because if you ask somebody, are you violent? No, no, how can I be? Blah, 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 blah. But then you start to show, and what about this? And what about this? And the other person become mute. And suddenly they discover that, yes, that they are indulging in those sorts of aggression of different type with other people. When we go into economic violence, into psychological violence, in moral violence and racial violence, well, the list becomes so interminable that really people realize that it's a topic that deserves being studied.
Yes, I'm just thinking that when you are talking about those
Mm.
tools for explaining and
Yeah.
you know,
Mm.
practical things of learning
Yeah.
as much as we can about
Yeah.
the popular examples of
Yeah.
violence. I'm thinking Ragnar,
Mm.
like in Kenya, because now you are aiming to go to a national TV and also to the radio program
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that you were in with Tracy and all that.
Mm.
Those are things that are very interesting to show, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
We definitely, as you are doing also with the cases of sexual violence in some communities in Kenya and other points of Uganda and the region, is something that where we have to become aware that it's important to have a systematic approach, lots of study, lots of information circulating. We have to educate the people.
yes,
And
yes,
those are the purposes of the forum, really the viewpoint that with which I approach the support of Rafael as an interpreter, since he doesn't speak the English as a means of communication. For us, the interest is to create conditions of dialogue in the different theme areas of the forum for universalist humanism, because the forum intends to be permanent. And in all these fundamental topics, like, for example, peace and nonviolence, we have to have lots of understanding. And people need to become aware in which way they are even not willing, becoming accomplices of the social violence. Because you say, well, the origin of violence is in the mind and in the heart of people, and from there it projects to society through their action, is too theoretical. They don't
Yes,
see it.
yes, yes, yes.
But when you start to disentangle case by case, example by example, since early ages of education, eventually we will be able to change the culture and
Yeah,
to
yeah,
eradicate violence. And
yeah,
violence has
yeah.
to be proscribed and it has to be shown as a mental disease and is
Yes,
acceptable.
yes.
So
Mental
that I
disease.
found very progressive and I found quite interesting in the approach of the World March. Then we had good media. We had television interviews and we have articles published because some of our friends are journalists, and then that was very uh, encouraging. And then we went into Nepal. In Nepal, the base groups are not as large as in Bangladesh, but there are lots of people who also have been for a long time and they are very solid. And we went to a city called Banepa that is not far from Kathmandu. And in Kathmandu, we visited the main universities and we had programs with them. We met with the medical students in the faculty, and we agreed with the University of Kathmandu to develop programs together and forums probably with Zoom platforms. And so we can be everywhere in the world and communicate easily. And we went to temples. We went to the interesting sites, historical sites, to understand the structures of society. And we had visits to municipalities, at least 3 or 4 of them, in Kathmandu and in Banepa, with very good reception from on behalf of the local authorities, the councillors, the mayor, and open up to collaborate and to develop things together. And we sign MOUs, that is memorandums of understanding, setting like the framework for a collaboration with the World March and with the humanist endeavors towards the future. So it's not that you say something and you disappear, but we leave all the conditions to follow up. And then we moved into Pakistan. And Pakistan, the march had not been there before. As you know, is a section of India that, when in times of Gandhi and Jinnah, they decided Muslims in Pakistan to be independent, and the Brits did a very arbitrary partition of the territory that before was part of the British Raj. And that creates lots of suffering in people who had to move, being displaced suddenly and with aggression, violence, etc. And that was the formation of the state of Pakistan. And there are geographical sections of that partition done in a very abrupt manner by the British Raj that determined that they have had conflicts with neighbors for a long time, Pakistan and India. Both are atomic powers, so it could be a point, very explosive points of if there is a prolonged conflict. And there is a sort of negative image about Pakistan in the West because of different reasons, geopolitically, how the powers established in Europe and in the United States and Canada, etc., they are trying to pump their own agendas in the way that is convenient to them and to their own alliances and balance of power. And sometimes they go tarnishing systematically the perception that exists by the general public of a certain geographic area or a certain country. And in that sense, at the moment, Pakistan is very interested in opening up and showing, in spite of the risks of terrorism and whatever, showing the West a different vision of the country. In fact, we were very impressed because people are extremely friendly, extremely open, extremely communicative. Although the traffic is very chaotic, I didn't see any accidents or any fights on the streets or any sort of aggression. There are lots of beep, 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 bap, bap. It's noisy. And they do the most incredible things that in a European country you wouldn't even dream to do, like driving in the opposite direction for the wrong side of the road, all this type of thing. And yet the balance is such that they manage to move along. Thousands of vehicles of all types, from the three-wheelers to motorbikes to bicycles to walkers to cars and everything. So I found that quite admirable and extremely talented,
Yeah,
and in the way that they drive and they keep the balance and keep
yeah.
everything flowing.
Because in the absence of rules, they need to rely on their own, intuition and
Yeah, exactly. It's a proportion of intuition that you wouldn't dream that they can be managed. And that is fantastic. And then we were treated very, very well. We were a guest of the state of Pakistan, and therefore our visas were cleared without difficulty, and we were received at the airport, and we had transport and escorts, because a few days back they had a terrorist attempt somewhere in Karachi, and therefore they gave us protection, security, and again, we had television, we have a radio, we had newspapers. We met lots of interesting people who are very prominent in academy, and we visit the club of journalists that is the repository of all the journalistic activity in the country since independence, very sort of traditionally, but it's a point of information, where we did one of the presentations of the World March. And we visited a number of universities of the different denominations. We visited temples and churches, because they are the Hindus and they are the Muslims and they are the Christians. And we went to the centers, to the cathedral of the Christian Catholics, as St. Patrick is called, and to the greatest Hindu temples, or the most traditional sacred shrines, and the Buddhist temples, and the Muslims mosques, and universities also of all the different categories. Discussions with students, questions and dialogues from them and the presenters of the World March. Solid, interesting, and intense programs. And after 2.5 days in Karachi, we went to Lahore, and where they are in the north. There are more Muslims there, and again a very interesting historical city with beautiful monuments. And then our friends there are very much into sports, student sports, and they are more in academia. Again, we visited universities. We saw a football match with different age groups participating, and not as intense as in the capital, but still very, very interesting and varied and different. And the organizers and coordinators of activities in Lahore and in Karachi, they have been working together in the preparation. They are all the members, in the sense that they have been connected to the humanist activities for the last 20 years. Krishan Sharma is our friend that is in charge of a sub-secretary in government that looks after the integration and the non-discrimination into all the cultural and religious groups in the country. So it's perfect fit for what we represent. And in Lahore again. So we had a say in the organization of the program, although it was absolutely their own proposition. We found it so interesting and varied that it was absolutely spot on. Yes. And then the last country that we visited was Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, after the civil war and after all the difficulties in political terms, what the structure that we used to have 20 or 30 years back, I mean, is reduced to very small groups of friends. We had planned in the University of Peradeniya, that is the main traditional university, in the School of Engineering, a meeting with 200 students, but it was a very short weekend. We went on a Saturday, and it's Diwali, the Hindu festival, and a long holiday. And the Thursday before, it has been a holiday, so the students went and really we found there our friends, lecturers, the head of the department, and a group of 15 or 20 friends that live in the vicinities of Kandy. So Kandy is where the university is. So it was a very interesting trip. On the way, we went to a elephant sanctuary, and we took some pictures with an elephant with posters of the World March. And after that, the next day, we had a meeting with Sarvodaya, that is that community of Gandhian Buddhist origin that is the largest NGO in Sri Lanka, where Silo paid a visit in 1981, when the founder of the organization was still alive, Dr. Tudor Ariyaratne. Now is his son, that is Dr. Vini Ariyaratne, who is in charge. So we paid a visit. Rafael gave him a book of the march, sign and all that, and we discussed plans of things that we could do in the future, because they have the capacity to host anything, and we have already a historical relationship with them. And also, we had requested to see the Prime Minister, but because of this short weekend, they didn't have room for anything, and they hadn't replied. And when I was about to take the plane back to London on Monday the 4th, Sherwin, that was supporting the organization and all this, told me, received a message saying that the office of the Prime Minister, she wanted to find out how longer was the march going to stay in order to organize the interview.
Yeah.
And we said, unfortunately, we are about to leave, and the march, Rafael de la Rubia had to leave yesterday, and so we left it for the next time.
Yeah.
So we also visited in the new government the candidate of the government to be a member of parliament for Colombo Central. That is a friend of friends there, and we have been in touch with him, and we published an article in Presenza a month before the election or something. So really, it's amazing when you see the diagnostic that they have about the situation in society, the government plan, etc. It's as hearing one of us talking. It's an incredible affinity there. And so we wish him well. And again, we gave him a book of the march, and then we said that we are going to continue the coordination in the month to come, because somebody running in the last week of an election to be a member of parliament, I mean, doesn't have a minute to wait. There he was in his district office, and people queuing to see him, and one call and another call. But he still spared with us 15 minutes. We exchanged, we laughed, and we wish him well. But the point is that in Sri Lanka, we are going to reaffirm our influence with the highest levels of government and the largest NGOs and universities. But now we have the capacity and the possibility to implement and to develop plans that are coherent, necessary, and interesting for everyone. Yeah. So the doors are open, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. It must have been interesting for you, since you were, how many years were you there building the human
About 5 years, yeah.
In Sri Lanka.
Yeah, in Sri Lanka, yeah. It's very changed, because, I mean, you know how they put buildings here and there, you don't recognize. They make wider roads and infrastructure and communication.
Yes. Yeah.
But essentially, it's very much the same. Very much the same, and it was very pleasant for me to see old friends. And to be in such a familiar territory.
Yes. No, I thank you very much, Antonio, because we are fortunate to be able to record your story of the visit, because this serves obviously as a very interesting demonstration effect as for Africa when later in November, by the end of November, the world match comes to Africa, the African countries.
Yeah, definitely, it's practically there, but because the march comes and produces a sort of attraction, a wave of interest
yeah.
amongst our organizers and also in the country at large.
Yes.
And so we have to take advantage of that momentum to do something else with greater substance.
Yeah.
And then there is exactly what we have been thinking during this month. And then we have the projects to train people in nonviolence in jails. And then we have the problems of education. We have the works in schools. And we have this initiative of U2 campaign. So I suppose that there we will have plenty of things to do. And then we will be able to replicate from one country to another things that to be successful, let's say, in Kenya or in Zambia.
Yeah.
So we are in a good footing.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think this is beautiful, and I think I will now take care of ending this recording session. Okay, so I go here.
You came out of the car. You parked.
Yeah.
It's windy there. We cannot hear you, Ragnar.
Yes, I had to go to the ATM to get some money. I'm buying the fish, more fish.
Okay.
I stop the recording now.
Yeah. So we are going to discuss further, or is for you to have a general picture?
A little bit, but then another meeting, the Human Party meeting goes on after this one.
Okay. Well, and during the week, let's discuss to more specifics and to see also how the March plans are and the calendar, because I am a bit out of.
Yes, let's. This is very nice, Antonio. It is very and how you say it is encouraging a lot.
And have you seen photographs of all these things or not?
I was seeing the videos and some of the M-Pesa articles. Yeah, actually, I gave myself time yesterday to look over all of this, and I think it's we should. Yeah, it is amazing, and I think we can use this. We have a meeting on Thursday with every second. I think maybe we can put this video of that Julius was taking now to share it in the group, and then on Thursday we can talk to the people. And we should maybe have one meeting among us before, maybe on
on Wednesday or something. And let's share photographs. I mean, how on the lists of each country there are a few, and now the people who also went to Bombay, especially from Nepal, they are back in Nepal. So we'll try to gather a sort of short reports in each one of those countries, done by the same people there, and photograph specific, so people can have a picture of all the events.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I saw some pictures. I saw you on the elephant, at least.
You were very. You and Rafa. It was like you had never done anything else but
riding elephants. Yeah. My granddaughter apparently said, "Oh, Dad," she said to her father, "I want to go with you and Granddad and to ride that hairy elephant." It was full of okay.
So, peace, force, and joy.
And to you. Ciao.
Yeah, peace, force, and joy. Thank you so much for this.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay.